Hello Africa, I'm glad you are back here on your favorite channel where we discuss current events, history and politics when it comes to Africa. Yes, today I would like to discuss on the situation in Uganda and what is happening in Uganda. So we will be doing this series and current events as part of what is going on in all parts of Africa. Now, when you look at the situation which is happening in Uganda, I have been engaged in these WhatsApp discussions with a lot of Pan-African platforms to try to explain what is happening in Uganda. Now, what is happening there is that the Pan-Africanists themselves need to always understand the forces at play in different nations when events are happening. Because I always say that history or current political events are rarely understood until they have become history. Let me repeat that. Current political events are rarely understood until they have become history. When you look at Uganda, Museveni has been in the country ruling for the last 35 years. I was born in 1986. Museveni himself, he came in Uganda in 1986, around the month of January. So you can see that we are the same age. I've never seen any other presidents. And when Museveni came to power, he was captured by the forces of neocolonialism and imperialism. Because he came to Uganda when the country was dysfunctional, totally dysfunctional. And there was no economy. There was no economy. So he started rebuilding this economy. But in all this, there was some base infrastructure that was built by the subsequent governments of Milton Obote, Idi Amin, and a few others there who are almost insignificant. Because some of them ruled for 6 months, some others 1 year, and like that. So they did not have time to build anything which you can say this is what they built. So you can count of Dr. Milton Obote, who was very close to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and he built a lot of base infrastructure in Uganda. And then you can count Idi Amin, who was vilified a lot by the West for violating human rights. Now, Museveni succumbed to these forces of neocolonialism for a very long time. In that, he succumbed to the forces of privatization, structural adjustment, SDGs now, which we are going through, now the Millennium Development Goals. So he sold off most of the assets of the country. That is Museveni for you. So now he starts realizing that what he was doing of selling things like the Uganda Commercial Bank, Uganda Electricity Board, Uganda Airlines, and all these things which belong to the state. He comes in 2000 and he starts in 1999 coming to 2000. He starts to realize that this was a mistake. What he did was a mistake. So he starts pulling back from the white people and what they were telling him, World Bank, IMF. So when he starts pulling out, this is around this period, 2004, 2006, when Uganda discovers a big amount of oil, a big chunk of oil. And these companies, they came in. They come in and they want to take oil, and he was resisting. He was telling them that they have to build an oil refinery. So when he told them that they have to build an oil refinery, they said that it was not feasible for Uganda to have an oil refinery. The oil should be exported out. As typical Europeans, like what they do in other African countries, it should be exported out as crude, as raw material, and should be brought back as refined. And he said that if they do not build an oil refinery, if they don't build an oil refinery, they will not take out the oil. So that was 2006. So he started pulling back from these forces. He started capitalizing a bank which was left by the government, which is called the Uganda Development Bank. So he started being, pro-African some way. Yet he has not been pro-African for all these long periods. So these forces of imperialism They came with companies like Talo, because these days that is how they move. Talo, Shell, Total. So they came like that, and they started sponsoring the demonstrations in the country. And that is where people like Besigye, who was in the opposition that time, started getting a lot of money, started frequenting Washington, started frequenting London, like how you see Morgan Shangarai was frequenting London, and they were using him to try to topple President Mugabe in Zimbabwe. So there was a lot of riots whenever Besigye went to the Western world and he came back. There was always a lot of riots in the country, but Museveni managed to contain those riots. Now, after 4 times of defeat by Besigye, the Western world lost interest in Besigye. They saw him as someone who cannot do anything to fulfill their interests. This is how the journey has reached, and they have taken on Besigye. They tried on also to take on someone who fell out with Museveni, the gentleman called Mbabazi. He fell out with Museveni and he tried to contest against Museveni in Uganda. So I always say people should pay close to the events, how they are happening and how they relate to other parts of Africa. Okay? So how do they relate to other parts of Africa? These events is necessary to understand the forces at play before anyone comments on them. Now, fast forward to Honorable Kyagulanyi, aka Bobiwine, who is the current contender. Now, this gentleman, if you go on the internet, there's All Africa. You can check Daily Monitor. You can type in Google that Bobiwine meets EU to discuss 2021 elections. This article was written in August 2020. So the European Union has been in secret meetings with Bobiwine to try to fund him, to give him advice on how they should take out Museveni. But why so? Why is this? So we see this scenario played out. The tricks which neo-colonialism has been using, they are not new. They are not new. So it's important for us to understand them before we comment. Like I said, political events are rarely understood until they have become history. So it is until they have become history that people start understanding that this is what was at play. Say, so this was the reason for all this riot. So that is the reason. Now the reason for all these riots that are happening in Uganda is because Uganda has discovered a lot of gold. Now Uganda has a lot of resources. Just like a typical African country with a lot of resources. A lot of gold. Okay? A lot of oil. Okay? A lot of iron ore. A lot of copper. And you have to understand that Uganda is in the midst of the Great Lakes region. We all know that water in the future is going to be the gold. Water, fresh water in the future is going to be the gold. And Uganda is in the midst of this fresh water. You can talk of Lake Choga. You can talk of Lake Albert. This is what they call the Great Lakes region. And Uganda is in the midst of the Great Lakes region. You can talk of Lake Victoria. You can talk of the River Nile. So all this is at play. And you can talk of the fact that Uganda also is the gateway to the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, which has a lot of resources also, and which resources these Western countries want to covet and they want to steal. Now, has Museveni done well? On the whole, Museveni has been a failure, just like any other African country, just like any other African president. On the whole, he has been a failure for the African people. But he has woken up on the last, when he has grown old. You see, he has just woken up when he has grown old and realized that he is supposed to work for his people. And this is the time at which the imperialists think that they have used him enough, they should discard him. So these are the things which I want people to understand. This is not the first time for people to die in Uganda during riots. People have died, a lot of people have died during Besigye's riots. And so it's the same thing which they are using on this young lad called Bobiwine. It is the same thing. So our people have always suffered in the past, in history. The African people have suffered. And even in the future, if we leave neocolonialism to continue to play on the African continent, our people, the same people, they will continue to suffer. And it is the same people who are suffering today, when it comes to police brutality. So my suggestion would be that people understand the forces at play. We should understand the forces at play. And if we are going to play and condemn or comment, we are supposed to understand the forces at play in all Africa, because the events that are happening in Uganda, they are no different from the events that are happening in Ghana, or the events that happened in Zimbabwe, the events that are happening in Ivory Coast, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, or Mali. They are not different. So we are supposed, as Pan-Africanists especially, or the people, as people who love Africa, those people who are Africans and they love Africa, and they want their children to stay on this African land, they are supposed to understand these events. You are supposed to understand what is going on, so that we can all shape a new Africa. Africa, what it needs is none of them, is none of Bobiwine or Museveni. It doesn't need the two of them. Because what Africa needs now is new political and economic infrastructure. What Africa needs now is a new way of thinking. What Africa needs now is a new mindset. A new mindset. Because Africa needs to be rebuilt in the next 40 years, rapidly. So we cannot build Africa on the same political and economic colonial infrastructure. These are colonial infrastructures. That is why you see that Africa has not developed for the last 60 years after independence. And yet the time for developing nations has reduced. You look at Europe, it took it 600 years. Okay? You look at the United States, it took it 300 years. When you look at Singapore, Japan, China, South Korea and all that, it took them 30 to 40 years. So this is the time for us as Africans to understand that we do not need political parties in Africa. We do not need NDC or NPP in Ghana. We do not need NUP or NRM in Uganda. We do not need ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe or MDC. We do not need ANC or Democratic Alliance, DA, in South Africa to build Africa. We do not need these parties. We need to come together as African people. What do we need to do now? We need to start demanding for a united Africa and fresh ideas, a new way of thinking that is going to build Africa rapidly, not this piecemeal which is done by Europeans from outside. It is us to understand how imperialism and neocolonialism is playing our people. It is us, especially the Pan-Africanists globally, are supposed to be at the forefront of analyzing these forces that are at play in every event in Africa, so that we can teach our people that these are the forces at play. Do not play by them. Do not succumb to their tricks. Do not succumb to all these mechanizations of neocolonialism. So thank you very much. This is your channel where we dissect current events, where we bring you history, where we talk politics. And like I told you, politics is not bad, but it is the political actors and the political system that is imposed. A particular political system is what makes politics bad. So these are the things which we will be discussing. These are the things I break down for you, so that you can understand that we are supposed to come together to build a new political system that will build Africa rapidly, industrially, in all areas, new infrastructure. There has to be a new way of thinking. We have to renew our mind. in how we are thinking about Africa. Thank you very much. Invite all your friends. Subscribe to the channel. Like and share. Invite all the other people. And comment. Subscribe to the channel. Comment down. Like and share and invite other people to these important analysis of the political events in Africa. Thank you very much.